Brayden Lowe didn't mean to shove the woman, it just happened when the crowd surged forward outside the subway station and his instincts kicked in. Watch it. A guy barked behind him. Brayden wrapped a protective arm around the woman's shoulders, pulling her out of the stampede of people flooding the sidewalk and steering her toward the wall of the building. "You okay?" he asked, breath ragged. The woman blinked up at him, dazed. Her oversized sunglasses were crooked, and her dark hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail that had come slightly undone. Yeah, she said, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you." He stepped back, realizing only now how close they were. "Sorry, I didn't mean to grab you like that. Just looked like they were gonna trample you." "No, she adjusted her sunglasses and exhaled. "You saved me from being crushed, so thanks." Brayden scratched the back of his neck. "People get crazy in the city when it rains. Guess it doesn't matter how many umbrellas they're carrying." She gave a tiny laugh at that, and he noticed the faintest dimple in her cheek. "You heading somewhere?" he asked, glancing around. "You look a little lost." "I was supposed to meet someone at the cafe down the block, but forget that. I'm not walking back into that crowd." He followed her gaze. The street was still a mess: construction cones, impatient drivers honking, people pushing past each other like the sidewalk was a racetrack. "I'm Brayden, by the way," he said, offering his hand. "Brayden Lowe." She hesitated just a second before taking it. Whitney Prescott. He couldn't place it, but the name sounded vaguely familiar. Maybe she was one of those lifestyle influencers his daughter's teacher always talked about, or maybe he was just imagining it. "Well, Whitney Prescott, you've got two options. Brave the chaos or take the long way around with me." She tilted her head. "And what does the long way include?" "Less people, probably more potholes, but I promise you'll survive." She smiled again. "All right, Brayden Lowe. Lead the way." He walked beside her, making sure she stayed on the inside of the sidewalk, away from the street. Her heels clicked against the concrete, but she didn't complain once, even when they had to step over puddles or dodge a cyclist. "So," she said after a beat of silence, "you live around here?" 10 blocks north. I pick up my daughter from school every day before work." She looked at him. "You're a dad?" "Yeah, Harper, she's 6, smart as a whip, stubborn like her old man." Whitney smiled. "That's sweet," he shrugged. "I don't know about sweet. It's chaos most days, but I wouldn't trade it." When they reached a quieter corner near the park, he slowed. "You sure you're all right? That crowd back there was no joke." "I'm fine," she said honestly. "I just wasn't expecting all that." He nodded. "You don't seem like someone who usually walks around this part of the city." She hesitated. "I don't usually. I had a meeting nearby and I thought I'd walk for once. Bad decision, apparently." "I wouldn't say that," he said, glancing at her. "If you hadn't, I wouldn't have met you." They stopped at the crosswalk. There was a faint blush on her cheeks now, but she didn't look away. "You're good at this." Brayden raised an eyebrow. "At what?" "Being kind, protective." "I barely know you, but you made me feel safe." He wasn't used to compliments like that. Most days, he was rushing between jobs: valet at night, construction work on the weekends, just trying to make sure Harper had everything she needed. He didn't think of himself as anything special. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," she said softly. "Not everyone would have done that." They crossed the street together, and he noticed her looking around, just slightly more relaxed than before. "You want coffee?" he asked, nodding toward the small cafe across the street. "It's not fancy, but the barista knows my name and they've got killer muffins." Whitney paused. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes, but yeah, I'd like that." They grabbed a table by the window. She ordered a black coffee. He got something with way too much cream and sugar, and they split a blueberry muffin. "So," he said between bites, "what do you do?" She stirred her coffee slowly. "I run a company." "Oh yeah, what kind?" She looked at him for a moment, then smiled. "Media, events." "That kind of stuff," he nodded, impressed. "That sounds big." "It is, sometimes too big." She looked out the window. "Today I just wanted to disappear for a bit." He didn't push. He could tell there was more to it, but he wasn't about to dig where he wasn't invited. "Well, you picked a good place to disappear to." They talked until her alarm buzzed. She stood reluctantly. "I really should go." He stood too, brushing crumbs from his jeans. "You want me to walk you to your car?" She hesitated. "Actually, would you mind walking me to the office building on 23rd? It's only a few blocks, but..." He grinned. "I've got time." They walked side by side again, her pace slower this time. When they reached the sleek glass building, Brayden looked up. "Whoa, you work here," she nodded. "Yeah. I do. Guess that's why your coffee order didn't include whipped cream," he teased. She laughed. "Maybe." He stuck his hands in his pockets. "It was good meeting you, Whitney." "You too, Brayden." He started to turn away, but she stopped him. "Hey. Do you come to that cafe often?" "Every weekday. After school drop-off. I might see you again then," he smiled. "Hope so." As he walked away, he didn't notice her assistant rushing to meet her at the door, whispering about a delayed investor call and rescheduled interviews. He didn't notice the way the security guard straightened when she walked in, or how everyone in the lobby turned to look at her. He had no idea she was the CEO of Prescott Media Group, one of the biggest event and branding empires in the city. But she'd smiled more in the last hour with Brayden Lowe than she had in the last 6 months. And for the first time all week, Whitney Prescott didn't dread walking into her office. Whitney didn't go back to the cafe the next morning, or the day after that. She told herself it was because of back-to-back meetings, a pitch presentation in Chicago, and a last-minute board dinner with investors who wanted to pull out. But deep down, she knew it had nothing to do with scheduling. It was the way Brayden had looked at her with no awareness of who she was or what she represented that shook her. Not because it was threatening, because it was rare. Everyone in her world wanted something. Investors wanted numbers. Her team wanted approval. The media wanted headlines. Even her ex wanted access to her name. But Brayden, he hadn't asked for anything. He'd just been there. By Friday, she gave in. She wore jeans, not designer ones, and a loose navy sweater. Her hair was down for once, and she left her driver idling 2 blocks away. When she stepped into the cafe, the scent of roasted espresso hit her instantly, grounding her in a way her glass-walled office suite never could. He wasn't there. She ordered a coffee and waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. Just when she told herself to leave, the bell over the door jingled, and he stepped inside, holding a small pink backpack in one hand and a paper bag in the other. His jacket was damp with rain, and his hair was tousled like he'd run a mile to beat the clock. "Sorry, Harper," he said to the backpack, "but that's as close as we're getting to a donut today. Mrs. K wants you to eat fruit, remember?" He turned toward the counter, and his eyes landed on her. She smiled. "Rough morning. Only if you consider spilled cereal, a missing sock, and a meltdown over shoelaces rough." He looked down at the bag. "But we made it." She nodded toward the backpack. "That for the little one. Yeah, school drop-off was a war zone today. But I told Harper I'd get her another new sketchbook. She's been going through them like crazy lately. She draws, constantly, mostly animals. Last week was flamingos, don't ask me why." He gave a short laugh and stepped up to the counter, ordering his usual without looking at the menu. Whitney followed him to a corner table. "So you're a regular here, every weekday. It's my 5-minute breather before heading to job number 2. 2 jobs, sometimes 3, depends on the week." She took a sip of her coffee. "That's a lot," he leaned back. "Well, I'm not doing it for fun. But it keeps food on the table and crayons in Harper's hands." There was no bitterness in his tone, just fact. She studied his face, noticing the faint shadows under his eyes. Not exhaustion exactly, more like endurance. "Do you ever take time for yourself?" He raised an eyebrow. "You mean like yoga and meditation, or even just a nap?" He grinned. "You get used to running on fumes." A silence settled between them, not awkward, just full. She watched as he tore a corner off a muffin and set it aside like he was saving it for someone. "You didn't ask what I do," she said after a moment. He looked up. "I figured if you wanted to talk about it, you would." She blinked. "That's rare. People spend half their lives trying to impress each other. I'm not great at that game." "Neither am I," she said quietly. He tilted his head. "I don't believe that." She hesitated. "I've spent years pretending I'm always in control, that I've got everything figured out, but lately, I'm not so sure." Brayden didn't say anything at first. "Then, you ever get the feeling that people around you only see the version of you that benefits them?" That made her sit up straighter. "Yes. Then you're not alone." She drew in a slow breath. "What if that version's the only one they want? Then they're not worth keeping around." Her throat tightened. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," he said gently, "but it should be." They were quiet again, the rush of the espresso machine filling the background. "You want to get out of here?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "Where?" "Walk with me. There's a bookstore a few blocks away. Harper loves the place. They've got this reading nook by the back window. It's quiet, peaceful." She hesitated, then stood. "Lead the way." The rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered. He held the door open for her without fanfare, and they walked side by side along the edge of the sidewalk. People bustled past, but none of it seemed to touch their pace. The bookstore was tucked between a hardware shop and a florist, its sign faded and crooked. Inside, it smelled like old paper and cedar shelves. A clerk looked up from behind the counter and waved. Brayden led her through the aisles to the back, where a worn leather armchair sat beside a tall window streaked with rain. "My daughter calls this the magic corner," he said. Whitney turned slowly, taking it in. "I see why. Sometimes we sit here and read for hours," he said. "It's the only place she doesn't try to renegotiate bedtime." She smiled, running her fingers over the spines of a few books. "You're a really good dad," he shrugged. "I try." "No, I mean it." He met her eyes, and something unreadable passed between them. "I don't know what your world looks like," he said, "but if you ever need to breathe, you're welcome here." She sat down in the armchair, knees pulled up slightly, and looked up at him. "Then I think I'll be visiting more often." Whitney hadn't planned to see Brayden again that weekend. But on Saturday morning, she found herself standing in front of a farmer's market on the Lower West Side, watching him from across the street. He was crouched beside a table of strawberries, Harper at his side, both of them examining the fruit with intense concentration. She wore a unicorn hoodie and rain boots, her tiny fingers darting through the cartons as she whispered something in his ear. He laughed. A real one, deep, unguarded, and full of something Whitney hadn't heard in a long time, joy. She hadn't intended to follow them. She'd come for fresh herbs. Or so she told herself, but her driver had dropped her 2 blocks away and her feet had carried her here. "Are you going to stand there all day or come say hi?" Brayden's voice cut through the morning air. Whitney froze. Harper was already waving both arms in her direction, her grin wide and gap-toothed. "Daddy, it's the cafe lady." Whitney crossed the street before she could talk herself out of it. "You two have good taste," she said, nodding at the overflowing produce table. Brayden straightened up, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Harper's the expert, I just carry the bags." Harper tilted her head up at Whitney. "Do you like blueberries? We're making muffins. Daddy burns the bottoms sometimes, but I help now." Whitney crouched beside her. "I love blueberry muffins. But only if they're made by someone who knows what they're doing." Harper looked at her father. "I told you I'm the boss in the kitchen." Brayden raised both hands. "I don't argue with the chef." Whitney stood, glancing toward the nearby coffee cart. "Mind if I join you for a bit?" Brayden nodded. "Sure, we were just about to find a bench." They made their way toward the shaded park behind the market, Harper skipping ahead, swinging a canvas bag filled with fruit. They found a spot under a tree where the grass was dry and the sun filtered through the leaves. "So," Whitney said, watching Harper pull out a small notepad and colored pencils. "What's the plan for the rest of the day?" "Laundry," Brayden said, leaning back on his elbows. "And fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen. It's been making that annoying drip sound all week." Whitney crossed one leg over the other. "You do your own repairs. Can't afford to call someone every time something breaks. YouTube's my silent partner," she laughed. "Impressive." "I can barely change a light bulb." He looked at her, amused. "Somehow I doubt that's true." "No, really. I tried to install a shelf once. It fell on my foot." Harper looked up. "You need Daddy. He makes things work." Whitney met Brayden's eyes. "Clearly." He shifted slightly, brushing a leaf from Harper's hair. "What about you? Got any big CEO plans today?" She stilled. "You knew?" Brayden shrugged. "I looked you up. After that second coffee, I figured I should know who I was talking to." Whitney exhaled slowly. "I wondered if you had." "I didn't say anything because it didn't change anything for me." Her brows rose. "Most people react differently once they find out. I'm not most people." She studied him, uncertain. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked toward Harper, who was now humming as she drew a purple elephant in the corner of her notebook. "Because I liked who you were without the title. Still do." Whitney looked down at her lap. "It's hard to know who I am without it. That's probably why you needed a break. You didn't come to that cafe just for coffee." She looked up at him. You're right. They sat in silence for a moment. The breeze carried the scent of warm bread from a nearby stall. Harper tugged at her dad's sleeve. Can she come over? Brayden blinked. Come over to our place for muffins. I can teach her my secret recipe, Whitney laughed. Your secret recipe? Harper nodded solemnly. It has cinnamon, but not too much. Brayden hesitated. We don't exactly live in a penthouse. Whitney turned to him. I don't care about that. He searched her face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but you've been warned. It's small, and the couch is older than Harper, she smiled. I've sat on worse. The walk to his apartment took 15 minutes. Whitney carried the berries. Harper insisted on holding her hand the entire way. As they reached the building, a narrow, red brick walk-up tucked between a laundromat and a deli. Whitney glanced upward, noting the chipped paint and crooked mailbox. Inside, the stairs creaked, and the hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet. But when Brayden opened the door to his unit, Whitney stepped into a home that felt alive. The walls were covered in framed drawings, dragons, castles, a family of rabbits in hats. A small couch sat beneath a window that overlooked the fire escape, and the kitchen was filled with mismatched mugs and cheerful disarray. Harper dropped her backpack and ran to the counter. Aprons. Brayden pulled two from a hook and handed one to Whitney. It had a faded cartoon bear on it. Hope you're not afraid of flour, he said. She tied it on. I've faced boardrooms full of billionaires. I think I can handle a 6-year-old chef. They cooked together in a rhythm that felt oddly natural. Harper measured while Brayden stirred. Whitney cracked eggs and tried not to laugh when half the batter ended up on the floor. By the time the muffins were in the oven, Whitney leaned against the counter, watching father and daughter dance to a song playing faintly from an old speaker. She didn't recognize the song, but it didn't matter. Brayden caught her looking and offered his hand. She hesitated for only a second before stepping into his arms. They didn't speak. They just moved slowly, the world narrowing to the space between them. The kitchen faded. The walls disappeared. When the timer dinged, neither of them moved. Finally, Harper giggled. You forgot the muffins. Brayden stepped back, his eyes never leaving Whitney's. They'll keep. Whitney's heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't come here looking for anything, but she'd found something she wasn't sure she could walk away from. The first time Whitney saw the inside of Brayden's world, it had felt like stepping into another kind of life, one without constant noise, without meetings stacked like bricks against her spine. But it wasn't just the quiet that pulled her back the following week. It was the way Harper's drawings were still taped to the fridge, the way Brayden didn't look at his phone once while he was with her, the way everything felt real. They didn't name what was happening between them. They didn't need to. It showed itself in small things: Brayden remembering her coffee with no sugar, Whitney bringing Harper a book about sea turtles without being asked. Things that couldn't be faked, but nothing stayed simple. It started with a headline. Whitney Prescott spotted in Brooklyn with unidentified man and child. She saw it on her phone during a meeting, the photo grainy but unmistakable. She was laughing, Harper on her hip, Brayden beside them, carrying a bag of groceries. The article speculated about a secret family. The comments spiraled into chaos. She didn't say anything to Brayden that night, but her silence had weight. The next morning, he found her sitting on the steps outside the bookstore before it opened. You okay? He asked, kneeling beside her. There's a camera in every corner of my life, she said, not looking at him. I've gotten used to it, but I didn't think they'd come for this. He sat beside her, his hands resting on his knees. I figured something was off when Harper said her teacher asked if you were her new mom. She turned to him, startled. She did. She said it made her feel important, like she was part of something big. Whitney swallowed. I didn't mean for any of this to touch her. I know you didn't, he said gently, but it has. She looked down at her lap. They're going to dig into you, into Harper. They'll twist it and make it ugly because that's what they do. I can handle ugly, he said. But I won't let them hurt her. I wouldn't ask you to. He leaned back against the step. So what do we do? Whitney didn't answer immediately. Then, I want to tell the board I'm stepping down. Brayden turned his head sharply. What? I've been thinking about it for months. I built the company from the ground up, but somewhere along the way it stopped being about the work. It became about keeping the machine running. I don't even recognize who I am in those meetings anymore. And you want to walk away, just like that. I want to live a life that feels like mine. I want to wake up and make muffins with Harper. I want to sit on the floor and read books without checking my inbox every 2 minutes. Brayden was quiet for a long time, then he stood and offered his hand. Come on. Where? Somewhere without cameras. They took a train out of the city. Harper was at school, and Brayden had traded shifts with a friend. Whitney didn't ask where they were going until they got off at a sleepy station surrounded by trees. He led her down a gravel path that opened into a clearing with a tiny lake half frozen, the sun glinting off the surface like silver. My uncle used to bring me here, he said. Before life got complicated, Whitney stepped closer to the water. It's beautiful. I haven't been back in years. Thought maybe you'd like it. I do, she whispered. He pulled a folded blanket from his bag and laid it out on a patch of grass. They sat side by side, the wind threading through the branches above them. I don't want to lose this, she said finally. You're not going to, Brayden said. But if I step away, if I disappear from that world, what if I don't know how to exist without it? You'll figure it out. You're not the kind of woman who stays lost for long. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. And what about you? What if this gets harder? It will, he said honestly. But I'd rather face hard with you than easy without. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. You know, I used to believe love had to be earned with sacrifice. That I had to give up pieces of myself to deserve it. And now I think maybe love should make you feel more like yourself, not less. Brayden leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. Then we're doing this right. When they returned to the city that evening, Whitney called an emergency board meeting. She didn't ask. She told them she was stepping down. She named her replacement, a woman she'd mentored for years, and walked out of the building without looking back. That weekend, Harper helped Whitney pack up her office. She drew a picture of the three of them standing in front of a big house with flowers in the windows. Brayden met them on the sidewalk, holding a ring box in his hand. I don't have a yacht, he said, or a private jet. But I have a daughter who adores you, and I have a life I want to share with you, all of it. The messy, the loud, the quiet mornings and burnt pancakes. Whitney's eyes brimmed with tears as he opened the box. The ring was simple, just a single diamond in a gold band that looked like it had been carefully saved for. Yes, she said before he could ask. Harper cheered and tugged on Whitney's coat. Can I wear a crown at the wedding? You can wear too, Whitney promised, laughing through her tears. They were married in the park where they'd first walked together. The bookstore owner officiated. Harper carried a basket of flower petals she scattered with dramatic flair, and Brayden cried exactly once when Whitney said she'd never known what home felt like until she met him and his daughter. They bought a little house with a yellow door and a swing in the backyard. Whitney started a nonprofit that helped women rebuild their careers on their own terms. Brayden fixed things with his hands and made Harper's lunch every morning without fail. And every Sunday, they returned to the cafe where it all began. No crowds, no chaos, just the three of them, sharing muffins that never burned anymore and a life built on kindness that asked for nothing and gave everything. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains in the kitchen as Whitney stood barefoot at the counter, whisking batter in a ceramic bowl. A soft jazz melody played from the old radio Brayden had repaired, and the scent of vanilla filled the room. She hummed under her breath, her hair swept into a loose knot, wearing a faded t-shirt that had once belonged to him. Brayden stepped in, still damp from his shower, toweling his hair with one hand. You're up early, he said, wrapping an arm around her waist from behind. She leaned into his warmth. I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about today. You nervous? A little, she admitted. It's the first time I'm showing the space to the team. I want it to feel right. He kissed her shoulder, then reached into the cupboard for 2 mugs. It will. You've built something that matters, Whit. People will feel that the second they walk in. She slid the whisk into the bowl and turned to him. And you're still sure about tonight? Harper's already picked out her dress. She asked if there would be dancing. I think we're committed, Whitney grinned. She's more excited than I am. Good. Because she's been trying to choreograph a father-daughter routine for the last 3 days. They laughed, and he handed her a mug filled with coffee. No sugar, just the way she liked it now. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was scheduled for noon. The building they'd chosen for the nonprofit was a refurbished firehouse with tall ceilings and exposed brick walls. Whitney had insisted on filling it with natural light, open floors, and corners designed for conversation. It wasn't just a space for women starting over, it was a place for them to feel seen. As they arrived, Harper in tow wearing a sparkly blue dress and a headband with a tiny feather, the small crowd gathered outside broke into warm applause. Whitney stepped forward, greeted by the women she'd mentored over the past few months, each one juggling a new business, a fresh start, or a reclaimed dream. "I never imagined I'd be doing this," she said during her speech, her voice steady. "But the truth is, I spent years chasing perfection. Success, recognition, and somewhere along the way I forgot that life is built in the in-between moments, the quiet ones, the messy ones, the ones that don't come with applause." She looked at Brayden, who stood beside Harper, his hand resting on her shoulder. "I found something better than applause. I found peace. I found purpose. I found family." Later, as the crowd mingled inside, Whitney slipped away to the rooftop garden. Brayden joined her, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "You did it," he said, handing her one. She sat on the edge of a planter, the city stretching around them. "I didn't do it alone," he raised his glass. "To second chances," she clinked hers against his. "To unexpected beginnings." He leaned in to kiss her, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't need words. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "You never asked me to walk away from that world," she said. "You just waited for me to choose the one I wanted. I didn't need you to be anything but yourself." That night, the lights in the backyard flickered on as guests arrived for the wedding celebration. It wasn't a formal affair, just friends, neighbors, and a few familiar faces from the cafe and bookstore. Harper ran around offering cookies from a tray, glowing with the kind of happiness that couldn't be faked. Whitney stood at the sliding glass doors, taking in the sight of fairy lights wrapped around trees, clusters of people laughing on picnic blankets, and Brayden adjusting the music volume from his phone. Her friend Elise appeared beside her, holding a glass of champagne. "You look like someone who forgot she's the bride." "I still can't believe this is real," Elise bumped her shoulder. "You earned real, now go live it." When the music shifted to a slow melody, Brayden appeared at her side. "May I?" She took his hand. "Always." They danced in the middle of the yard, barefoot in the grass, surrounded by laughter and candlelight. Harper twirled beside them, then flopped onto a chair with a content sigh. As the evening wore on, guests trickled out and the backyard quieted. They sat together on the porch swing, Whitney's head on Brayden's shoulder, Harper curled up in a blanket at their feet. "I've been thinking," Whitney said, tracing idle circles on his palm. "Dangerous," he teased. "I want to take Harper to Italy." He looked at her, surprised. "Italy?" She's been drawing gondolas and leaning towers for weeks. "Thought we could make it real," he smiled. "You sure you want to travel with a 6-year-old who narrates everything she sees?" "She gets it from you." He laughed, then kissed the top of her head. "Italy it is." The stars above them blinked quietly, and the house behind them glowed with the soft light of their life, a life built not from wealth or headlines, but from steady steps, earned trust, and a love that arrived without warning and never left. Months passed. Then seasons. They visited Italy. Harper insisted on eating gelato every day and made friends with a street artist who taught her how to sketch with charcoal. Brayden kissed Whitney under the moon in Florence, and they danced in a plaza when a violinist played something slow. Back home, the nonprofit flourished. Whitney mentored quietly, content with impact over attention. Brayden opened a small repair shop next to the bookstore, and Harper's drawings now hung in both places with proud little name cards. They celebrated birthdays with pancakes and laughter. They spent Sunday mornings reading on the couch, legs tangled. They learned how to argue without wounding, how to listen without fixing, how to love without fear. There were no more headlines. No cameras. Just a home with chipped paint, a swing in the yard, and a family that had found each other not through perfection, but through presence. And in that quiet, ordinary, extraordinary life they lived happily, completely, unshakably in love.